Well, thank you all for coming. So what we're going to do this morning is each of the members is going to speak about what impacted them the most. And many of us were impacted by many of these things, but we're going to have each person speak. I put up this map we're not going to talk about the current situation other than here's the Gaza Strip. We flew into Tel Aviv, we bused to Tiberias on the Sea of Galilee, spent the first 3 nights there. And then we came back down here. Bethlehem is here, so we were staying in Bethlehem. And we spent most of the time in Israel here and went down along here to the Dead Sea, Masada, and the Dead Sea Scrolls. And then we went across into Amman and then down here. So that's just kind of the lay of the land, but we don't have time to give you the entire story. So our guide Sufyan was a Palestinian Christian. Whenever we went to a location, he would whip out his iPhone and bring out a chapter and verse that was particularly appropriate to where we were. And this is where everyone believes that Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount. So I got the opportunity to read the Beatitudes in front of our group, and I almost didn't get through it. It was really, really impactful. And it was the first time I got chills on the trip, because it was about 100 degrees. The Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level. I knew that the Dead Sea was. I didn't realize that it was half as, Dead Sea is 1,400 feet, Sea of Galilee is 700 feet below sea level. So it was very warm, but it was really good. So Ingrid, and I don't think everybody knows everybody.
No,
but
I'm Ingrid.
and she and Jan Foley, who lives in New York, were people that Diana invited here. And so
Yeah, Diana been my friend since I came to the United States. She's been my mother. And it was an amazing trip, absolutely amazing trip. And I was lucky enough to have Pat as my roommate, and we just enjoyed in Jerusalem, morning sunrise and sunset, because we saw it coming up and coming down. You guys don't know, I live in Medical Lake. Well, I was one of those who lost my house, so everything I lost. So when I was over with this wonderful group, I wasn't even thinking about anything in my house or all the trouble with insurance or something like that. So I slept well. When I came back, it just knocked me out. Every night I was writing down and doing things that I should remember, insurance and all this, till I one night started to think about our wonderful trip. And then it hit me, the first night I slept 12 hours. In the end of that, before I went to sleep, it was us in the ring singing. That was so amazing. And all those, just like I said, wonderful, wonderful people. I'm so thankful, and thank you for letting me come with you guys. So here is the song, one of the songs. Did not ask for the close-up.
Okay, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the Church of the Annunciation.
Wait, no
more.
Diane, stand up.
I just turned the video on.
Oh, do I have to stand up?
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't the plan.
Yes, I'm sorry.
I'm not a public speaker, so please bear with me. Anyway, this is the Church of the Annunciation. And this was erected to mark the location of the visit from Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, to Mary, announcing that she would be becoming the mother of Jesus. And as is the case with many important sites in the Holy Land, what is now standing was probably the third or fourth or fifth or whatever structure that has been erected on the same site, and that's the case here as well. This basilica was completed in 1969, and it stands on the foundation of a 12th century Crusader church, which in turn contains evidence of an earlier Byzantine church, as well as an even earlier synagogue, presumed to be a Jewish Christian house of worship. Now the Franciscans, they have been involved with this church for hundreds of years, and they continue to be involved with this church. And the church itself has 2 stories. This is the top story. The lower level contains the grotto, which is actually believed to be the remains of the original home of Mary. And the upper level here contains a number of images of Mary, as you can see. And there's a lot of mosaics that were given and donated by a lot of different countries. And outside of the church, there is the courtyard, and it has a gallery of Madonnas. And this is one of them that was kind of unique. Obviously, most Madonnas have Mary holding Jesus, but in this particular case, you can see that Jesus is also holding Mary. You can see his little hand around her neck. And these mosaics were huge, and they were just, I don't know how many there were. There were many countries over the world have provided these. And another one that was really particularly neat was the one from Japan, I believe. And instead of mosaics and things, had used pearls. And so it was beautiful. But I think the thing that boggles my mind the most about this church and the area itself was looking back at Mary and Joseph and how young they were. I mean, she could have been as young as 13 or 14 years old. And to think, it's just mind-boggling to me to think that the angel Gabriel came to her, essentially gave her this information, and then left. And then she was left to figure out how to tell her parents, Joseph. You know, they lived in a very small community, and it must have been quite scandalous at the time. And that just really boggles my mind, and it always has and probably always will.
Thank you. Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, whoops. So the picture you see was actually a huge mural. And it was in the bottom of in the lower part of one of the, and we can't call it a church, it is a spiritual center at Magdala. Mainly because right outside before you walk in, there are ruins of a synagogue that was there at the time of Christ. And they tell us that that's one of the places he would have spoken, and he would have taught people as well. Originally, they were going to be building a hotel there, but they uncovered this, and this was not that long ago. It was like in 2009, 2010 when they found it. So the church that this is in, Spiritual Center. Spiritual Center that it is in was they started building it in 2009. And once again, there are a group of Catholic priests who kind of look over this. They have, I think it's the Legions of, you can help me. So they were the ones, they're the ones that are in charge of this area.
Franciscans.
Yes,
Well,
Francis.
but it's the Jewish Council of the Seven.
It's
It's not a church, it's
No,
a
it's not a
spiritual
church.
center.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual center. So,
No more churches.
no, no more churches. So, this is downstairs. We also sang there.
Yes.
Yeah, actually, the first video,
Was that?
That was the right one.
that was upstairs
Yes,
in what we would probably call the narthex
Yeah.
of this church.
yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
spiritual.
I
call it a
And the
church.
spiritual center is dedicated to women. I don't know
Yes,
if they're-
yes. So in that,
Wow.
where we were singing, where you saw that, you could see some columns around the edge. And on those columns are the names of women of the Bible. And there is also one that is blank, because that's for all of us women who believe in Christ as well. So they each have Mary Magdalene, this was in the town that she had grown up in also. Now downstairs, where that is,
Good job.
it wasn't a huge room, it was about the size of this room actually. But it was around the edges, there was a bench for us to sit on. The floor was made out of, sure, this was an odd one, but they had taken some of the stones out of the original synagogue and put them at the bottom of that area. So when I walked down there, because it's enclosed, it's extremely quiet, even these guys were quiet. Extremely quiet, and it was a time for prayer and reflection and meditation. And it's happening now too. I immediately got goosebumps as I walked down there, and when I think about it, I do as well. Because it is a place where you can really think about what's going on and how close God is actually to us. And I think that's what makes me like the painting that's there also. And so that comes directly out of Luke. It's Luke 8, and it starts, I'm gonna start it at 43, because that is, Jesus has been in this town, and one of the people in the, I don't think it was a rabbi, but he was a worker with the synagogue there. His daughter was dying, and he came to see if Jesus would come help. So as they're on their way, where is it? Here it is. As he went, the people pressed around him, and a woman who had a flow of blood for 12 years and could not be healed by anyone came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. Like that. And immediately her flow of blood ceased, and Jesus said, "Who was it that touched me?" You know, this is called "Who Touched Me." Depends on which version you look at, what it says. When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the multitudes surround you and press upon you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone forth from me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declaring in the presence of all people why she had touched him, and how she had been immediately healed. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace." So this was the picture, like I say, it's the fact that it was not, it was extremely large, as you can tell from this, but the room around it was also very meditative, I guess.
It was,
Relaxing.
and it felt like a synagogue.
It did.
It had that feel of a small
Yeah,
synagogue.
it did. So, that was my special one. You're next.
Okay, Bruce.
Bruce, go ahead.
This way, I follow hers, so that way everybody has pity like Carol had. Anyway,
Switch your
mine's the,
picture.
huh?
Picture.
Well, you want me to play the video first, or why don't you
Sure,
explain
go
the
ahead.
vid? Well, tell them what it is.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this is
I'll play.
about the Lord's Prayer, and it's at a gathering place there, and a spiritual gathering. And it had all these all the Lord's Prayer in all the different countries' languages that had donated to put on this. I don't know how many was there, 60, 100 on the wall, every one of them. They all were beautiful. They were all mosaic. It was just a very interesting thing, and the Lord's Prayer, to me, touches everybody in this room. All of us have known the Lord's Prayer since we was kids. And there's a lot of dynamics. I'll let you go ahead and play this now, thank you.
And this is in the Church of the Paternoster, so.
Is it? Okay,
Yeah.
that was-
The church, yeah, the Church of the Our Father, and this is our guide, Sufyan, singing the Lord's Prayer in Arabic.
This is why we didn't like to sing with him alone. Stefan has a beautiful voice. You don't want to, I mean,
And
you
he's
stand
very
next to him and
devout.
you're just like,
Yeah.
He was a very good tour guide. But anyway, with the Lord's Prayer, you look at it and you start dissecting it. So I've never done that before until I knew I had to speak to you guys. But, you know, it's carried me through in life, and my wife and I's life and our family life. It's had something to do and basis in everything. And it's a very holy thing. And I just, to me, I love it when they sing it, or when I sang it. I sang it in some places and things. I couldn't do it these days. I don't think my voice is good enough. But anyway, it has a lot of things and a lot of meaning in every family, every individual out there that believes in Christ. And all I can say is it was a very emotional thing for me, that we hold hands always in the church when we do the Lord's Prayer. And I got to hold my father's hand, and we said amen on his last heartbeat. And to me, that gets very emotional, man. And but it gave me peace, because I didn't realize until about a month or 2 months later after that it showed me not to worry. Death is not the end. It's just another beginning. And I was not worried about my father. I thought he died in peace. And I got to see that and be reassured he was my teacher all my life. And he still was teaching me just at the end. So I feel it's a very emotional type of prayer to everybody. And I just happened to have an opportunity, and Carol was there with me too. We were all holding hands, and it was just an emotional thing. So.
Whoop, whoop.
You're next.
So these are the pictures of the two best looking guys that were on the, on the tour.
The twins.
Yeah. Anyway, before I start, I have to put out a disclaimer. And so here it is. My future statement in no way endorses the conflict that's going on right now in the Middle East. It does not endorse anti-Semitism or anti-Palestine. I could sum up in one word of my personal experience, and I'm a political kind of guy, but I was disillusioned with the whole experience. Yes, we went to these great sites, moved by them, but where we stayed at, and it was in Palestine, and I could sum it up and say, you know, it was like 1930s Germany with how the Palestinians were being treated. You know, it was kind of like the haves and have-nots. I was going to have pictures, but I just couldn't bring myself. We're in Jerusalem, and it's like Hollywood Boulevard, and it's clean, and you get into Palestine, and the streets were filthy, the fences, it wasn't good. The first night we were there, I was invited to go to a Palestinian home for dinner, and met this family. the two main people were Muhammad and Aziz. Muhammad is studying to be a physician, and he was just home for the summer, or in between semesters from Cairo. The family, they called their home wasn't a home. It was like a camp. And what their home was is you walk through this wall, and you get to this filthy alley. And they walk through the alley, and then you walk up, and there's just a door in the hallway or in the wall. And you walk up a few stairs, and you have their home. And it looks like most of the homes are 3 rooms. The family, they were very gracious, and they were like, here, let me get you something to eat. Let's have some coffee. Let's have this. Beautiful, kind people. 6 people in the family, ranging from mid-20s down to 10 years old. They were single-parent family. Their father was killed 5 years ago, crossing the street right there. And the IDF had just shot him. This is one side of the story, don't know why, but then this, the 5-year-old, at the time, he just knows that his father was killed. Very gracious. They, it looks like, or it appears, you get outside of the Jerusalem area where they have all the touristy shops. And in Palestine, not so many of the touristy shops, but the families are selling trinkets to everyone. And because I had befriended this family, they came to the bus every morning that we were getting off of, and it was like, I'm friends of Matt, I'm friends of Matt, and trying to sell their stuff. And it was quite sad, actually. And they were always asking for money just so they could get food. It was just heartbreaking to see that. So there's our political statement for the group, and it I don't know, that's only my opinion, but it was horrible. The Palestinians actually have to have a separate license plate on their car to travel anywhere to show that they're Palestinian. And all I could think of was like 1930s Germany. Let's put that star on your clothing, and they have to have it in a car. And there's checkpoints everywhere, which you kind of understand, but not to just being separated out, and the have and have not. Here's the wealthy, so to speak, and here's the rest of the people. And that includes the Palestinian Christians. I mean, it was if you're from Palestine, that's the way it was. So anyway, there we go.
You said IDF, meaning Israeli Defense Forces?
Yes, IDF, Israeli Defense Forces, yes.
And
I'm sorry, that's Sufi.
And we called, so this is our guide Sufian, and Sufian always called Matt Damon. Everywhere we went, Sufian would run into other tour guides who knew him, and one of those tour guides said, you're traveling with George Clooney. They were the celebrities.
Yeah, there we go. I was the George Clooney one.
yeah.
No, me next.
Oh, Pat, wait, sorry, I got
Yeah,
my.
that's okay.
There we go.
So my little excursion that not everyone came along with was I had medical problems, and so I'm going to tell you about a trip to an emergency room in Jerusalem because I could feel the heat. It was like 95 and 100, and if I'm in Spokane, I'll look at temperatures like that and stay inside. And my heart did not like going up and down hills in that heat. So there was a morning in the hotel in Bethlehem when I knew I couldn't go that day. And and all my friends were gathering around me, and Matt's going, "What are your vital signs?" And his wife Camille's just taking my pulse, and I'm going, "Yeah, I'm in AFib. I know I need an emergency room." So I have to tell you how many people took care of me.
So that's Elias.
So Elias and Sufyan came over, and I asked a stupid question, I realize now. I said, "I know I need to go to an emergency room. Is it better to go to one here in Bethlehem, close to the hotel, or is it better to go with you guys into Jerusalem?" I wasn't thinking until days later, I'm asking, who's got better health care, the Palestinians? And they walk away and call their bosses, and they come back with, "You're gonna get on the bus with us and go into Jerusalem." And the plan was they would drop everybody and Sufyan off, and then Elias, the bus driver, would take me to the hospital. So as everybody gets off the bus, good old Gail says, "You're not gonna do this alone." Gail blew off that day of the tour herself and kept me company as best she could in the hospital.
Before you think I'm a saint, that particular day, everything on the itinerary I had done in a previous trip there. So it wasn't giving up.
And
As
in
much as
fact,
she
everybody
said.
said I never could have done it, given the shape my heart was in. So in the Jerusalem emergency room.
I thought you were there for last rites.
No, that was not my pastor.
Gail ended up staying in a waiting room, and I spent hours in a back hallway that was lined with chairs along with everyone else. So of course I'm listening to a lot of Hebrew and a lot of Arabic, and I'm watching, ordinary people who are coming in and out and also distressed. I'm watching a woman in a wheelchair coming in screaming and crying, and I have no idea what was wrong. But I'm also watching clearly Arabic people and Jewish people who work well together. They're teaming, they're in this job doing their work, they're laughing and joking, they're all younger than me, and they look sprightly, energetic, and happy to be working together. The hallway's crowded, so sometimes I'll see two people passing and there's that oomph, oomph, and clearly they do not like being near each other. One of the most interesting groups that I watched was clearly an Orthodox couple who came in, and they just seemed like their own little island. They sat off to my right by themselves, talked quietly. The man had a very long white beard, very long black coat, and it's hot outside. The woman is in long sleeves, long dress, a turban completely covering her head, and they keep to themselves. And at some point, the man with his cup goes down the hallway to the bathroom and immediately comes out and stands there waiting. And a janitor comes by, cleans the bathroom, and the man then goes in and does his urine sample in his cup. And I had to wonder, was it really a filthy bathroom? Or if you're Orthodox, do you need a higher standard? I'll never know the answer. But I'm just watching everything going on. And we all ping from our chairs in this hallway, we're all going in and out of little rooms. Go here, get your blood drawn. Go here, get your EKG. Go here and talk to someone who can speak English, in my case. At one point, I go down the hallway to the bathroom. And when I come back, this Orthodox woman comes up and approaches me and says, "Patricia?" with this question mark in her voice. And she points to a room. And I can tell, oh, they've called my name while I was in the bathroom. And so I go in and talk to a physician and come back out. But after that, as we crossed each other in the hallway, we had this little connection, we had this little relationship. And this woman would smile at me and make eye contact with me, which she hadn't been doing with anyone else. And I'm coming back, I'll always remember that woman's face and her eyes and her smile as she helped a clearly foreign woman who was out of her depth. When I was finally discharged, I was thrilled to find Gail still in the waiting room. And Elias, our bus driver, who looked at my discharge papers that I was holding, and he gave me a wink, and he turned them 180 degrees. So that they're readable, because they're all in Hebrew. I can tell you, when I saw my cardiologist when I got home, he did exactly the same. Can you read Hebrew? But Elias was my hero ever after that, because now we had the dilemma of Gail and I are in Jerusalem. We need to get back to Bethlehem, and Elias needs to stay available for the rest of the people on this group. Elias took Gail and me on the bus to a rendezvous point where he had arranged to meet a friend who's a taxi driver. And that taxi driver took us back through the checkpoints to get back into Bethlehem. And then he also took me to a pharmacy to get some medication, and then back to the hotel. Elias from that day forward would pull me aside and tell me, here's how the day's gonna be. This is what I think, you know, and these are places that will have cafes. You should maybe sit for a little while here. I wasn't in a life-threatening situation, but when your heart's not efficient, gravity's your enemy. So everywhere I go, if I was moving, I could be fine. But the minute we would stop and stand in line, the minute our guide would talk to us, I just did the preschool teacher thing and I sat on the ground. So Elias was outlining every day for me after that for this'll work, this'll work, this'll work.
Wow, oh, we're so glad you're good.
So while we have this picture up, so this is Jan Foley. So Diana invited Jan and Ingrid. And then this is Camille, and the beautiful voice that you heard, the soprano voice singing, that's Camille. She's definitely the best singer. And then Carol, why don't you talk about Mary and Mike for a second?
So Mary's down in the bottom and Mike's back between, right behind.
He looks a little scared, I don't know why.
What are they gonna ask you to do next?
What are they gonna do next? So Mary and I were college friends. She was the big sis in my sorority. She was my big sis. So we have been friends for, she predates Bruce. So we have been friends for over 50 years. So when I let her know, she and Mike, Mary and Mike both lost their spouses about the same time, but they did not know each other until 10 years later. So they do a good job. They're both very adventurous, so they take trips together. So I let them know that we were having this trip, and they snapped it up like, I mean, it wasn't, you know, I'm on the phone and saying, well, do you want to do that? Yes! Do you think Mike does? Yes! So they were hoping to be here today. Unfortunately, actually it was a lady that sang next to her in the choir passed away, so her funeral was yesterday, so they couldn't get from Seattle to here in time. So yeah, and they are still very, very excited about the trip.
Well, and you can just tell how close this group became on this trip. And both last night and this morning, we kept getting texts from
I know, Mary
and
is
from
always up
Jan.
at 5 and she will
The
text
people
you
that
at
couldn't be
5.
here today. Yeah, yeah.
Hey, Jan texted at 4:30.
She's right, Mary was right on it,
Like
right
Plains,
after.
New York, yeah.
She always texts like at 5 a.m., because she's always gotten up early
But
when she was working.
I never thought about this though. If you look at Mike really close, I think that's Red Skelton.
And Sufjan does look more like George Clooney. The women all noticed that, I don't know why.
My wife, Camille, she does, she has a beautiful voice.
Yes.
And that amphitheater that we were in where you two sang.
Yeah, yeah.
No microphone, anything, and this music just bellowed out into this Colosseum type.
Roman Colosseum.
Yeah, in Caesarea Maritima,
Yeah.
right on the Mediterranean Sea, Bat and
Little
Camille
concert.
sang without microphones, and we were hundreds of feet away, and it was like
Yeah.
they had microphones. It was
Yeah.
like-
Romans knew what they were doing when they made Colosseums. They weren't particularly anything, yeah.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
that was one thing, you know, everywhere we're seeing these old ruins, that sort of thing, going, the intellect, you know, they were able to do this. You know, we send people to school for years to be architects and builders and all of that. You know, they knew how to do it. They knew how
Yeah.
to do it. And for it to last this long.
It's your turn anyway,
It's my turn anyway. I asked him to leave this for just a little bit, because I want to talk a little more about Elias and Sufjan. I'm not sure that Pat knew it, but Elias came back and checked on us 2 different times through the whole time. He couldn't go back and see her, but I'm sitting in the waiting room.
Because he's got this big bus, he couldn't park close to the
Yeah.
hospital.
Yeah. And Sufjan, this man knows so much about history, about architecture, and about scripture. Just amazed me with the stuff that was coming out of that man.
And he thought about going to the seminary.
Yeah, he thought about going to seminary and decided he could basically minister better this way and then reach more people this way. So they were very special, and a little add-in to the hospital story. So I'm sitting, it's about 4 hours, I think.
It's
In-
ER.
It's an emergency.
I was gonna say, I felt like in a lot of ways I was in an American ER. But I'm sitting there and saw your friends go into the city, Orthodox. But while I'm there, one of the first things I notice is an ambulance comes in, and the attendants come in, and one of the attendants one of the EMTs has the pistol in his waistband. And, you know, I'm going, that's weird. And then it's like, remember where you're at, Gail. These people get called out, they don't know what they're walking into. So I guess they all carry, at least carry a pistol. And then I'm sitting there, and a little while later, a young man comes in uniform with, I don't know my guns very well, but it
M16.
was, huh?
M16.
M16?
Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah.
They were everywhere.
They're everywhere. Brown sits down and just has it across his lap like nobody's business. And I'm sitting there, and I should have gotten you that picture. A very wonderful thing with cell phones. I just kind of pulled my cell phone up, made it look like I was playing a game on it, and I took a picture. Because he would not have liked it. Anyhow, next slide. So, you know, somebody asked me recently, high points, low points. This is my high point, but it's also based on my low point. Pastor Lori was unable to go with us, and that was sad. We thought of her every day, and you know, every day I kind of, oh, she would like this, or what did she think about that? And wound up being the bad texter. I texted her several times in the middle of the night. I learned if I did bedtime, it would be just about right. But anyhow, that also kind of changed our itinerary around. A couple places where we were to have worship, that sort of thing, got switched around. Until somebody outed me as pastor.
Who was the Tokyo Rose?
And he figured that out pretty early on, yeah.
Yeah. You know, because some of those places we were going to go and worship, they wanted a pastor. So now we've got a pastor again. So schedule's changing a little bit more. I didn't know at the time that it was Dave. I probably would have had a word or two. But Sufjan comes
Well,
up.
now, in my defense, he said, I understand that there is a pastor in this group, even though Lori is not here. What was I gonna do? Lie?
You could have said it was Bruce.
And it was funny because was this at Church of the Beatitudes?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It was very early on, and so he comes up, Sufjan comes up to me as people are still wandering around, getting ready to gather. Same question. I understand there's another pastor on this trip. Would you happen to know who it is? And like I said, I didn't know the other interaction. I said, well, you're looking at her. He took off with his phone, on his phone. Only word I understood was pastor. What have I just stepped into? But what happened is we'd have a couple of places we were scheduled to serve communion or to receive communion. But if we didn't have a pastor, that became a little more difficult. So anyhow, this is in the Garden of Gethsemane. There's kind of the big Bain olive grove and the church, Church of All Nations. And I had been told earlier that morning that we would be having communion there. So I go into the Church of All Nations. And big, elaborate chancel area. And I think there were 5 celebrants up there. I'm going, oh no. No. I'm not dressed for the occasion. So anyhow, came back out and ran into Sufjan. And I asked, I said, are we gonna be in there? No, he said. And I'm thinking, okay, where are bread and wine? Doesn't have a backpack, so he's not carrying. And all of a sudden, this guy comes down the pathway with a bottle and Watson. And cups. Little tiny cups. So, we went into, this is kind of a side garden to the larger garden. And obviously set up for worship. So I don't think it was the first time. But anyhow, I had the honor, the privilege, I don't know what words to put to it, to preside at communion. Sufjan and his phone saved me because I would not have been able to do it from memory. But he was able to pull up the Lutheran order on his phone and got it all set for me. And it was a mystical, it was a real mystical experience. Communion is one of the main centerpieces of my faith experience, my faith journey. And so standing there serving communion, 2 different things happened. As we were concluding, and was it you, Mary, that the dove came down and sat next to her?
Oh my.
And then I also realized that this church and this garden are on a main thoroughfare, at least 4 lanes, and traffic going. For the time that we were in the garden, I don't know if it actually stopped or what, but I did not hear anything.
So, Gail, it did not stop. I have video.
Oh, I'm sure.
And you hear honking and yelling, and
I
you were oblivious to it.
I was oblivious to it, which,
Spiritual ears.
yeah, which just made it beautiful and meaningful. And then I thought, okay, we've had a trip, I've had this wonderful experience. Come back And the first Sunday I'm back, I was asked to assist in communion. And every person from the group that came up, I just about burst into tears.
Yeah.
The intimacy of that experience and the intimacy of communion struck me at that point.
So Mary is gonna do kind of the travel log version of this for us.
Yeah, I guess the things that really struck me about the trip, just really briefly, is one is, especially in the Jerusalem and Palestine, was feeling like this is where Jesus was. I mean, it just not having been any place like that, it's like, he, could be standing right here, in this place. And also being now able to visualize what these areas look like. When we read about the names in the Bible, I can see it. So the last 3 days of our trip were in Jordan. And we had to cross the border and met our guides on the other side. And our guide's name was Motassem, and he was Islamic. And so we got a real sense for the Muslim religion. He talked about some of the values of that, their culture. And to me, that was so meaningful, and kind of juxtaposing that with the Christian and Jewish that we had just experienced, and also the similarities. But
So this Wadi Rum is like right here.
right. So the first place we went was Wadi Rum, and to tell you, I didn't really know what to expect on this Jordan. But it was so much fun. Let me tell you. I got there. And then we got in the back of these trucks and rode around the desert in this red sand and around these rock formations, which you can see are kind of like our canyon lands kind of areas. And one of the areas we went, we saw some pictographs that had been done by 3rd century traders that came through this area. We saw that's like a little sculpture in a rock that was of Lawrence Arabia and the king, because this is where Lawrence Arabia.
But by the way, Peter O'Toole did him proud, because Lawrence was a chubby little dude.
So, and then we stayed in this, there are these desert resorts like this, they're kind of placed throughout the desert. I mean, it was glamping to the stream. It was wonderful. Great food. The whole trip, I thought, was great food. And so we saw the sunset, and then in the morning we took camel rides. And if you haven't done a camel ride, it's not the most comfortable thing. You might feel like it, even though that saddle was really well padded.
It's like riding a fat horse with no stirrups.
And now your back can get you when they're sitting down.
My camel had the mask on, so we call it the COVID camel.
We think he bit.
Yeah. So this is kind of a cool picture.
So
There's
this
Dave on
is
the last
me,
one.
I'm holding my iPhone, bouncing up and down. The image stabilization on the iPhone video is incredible.
But, yeah, so it was really fun. So we saw the sunset and the sunrise in the morning and the sunset at night. We got off the camels. Then we went up to Petra, which is, they're the Nabateans, if you don't know anything about it. They were a culture, a kingdom, in like the 600 BC, and very wealthy. And so this is a tomb that's just carved into the side of this rock. We went through this kind of a long cabin, like you're going through some of our big
Slot Canyon.
Slot Canyon is the name of it. It was about a mile, and there were some different drawings there. Some of the things that we saw while we were there was the Bedouins, who are in tents, and they live out in the desert, and they're shepherds, or have camels and goats and sheep. And I asked if they were the poor, and the guide said no, it's just a lifestyle really. But they've encouraged them to get houses but they'll put a tent outside their house. So then the kids can get educated.
If they get a little more stationary.
Right,
then you
right.
can educate the
And
kids.
this, and Jordan is, just a couple things about Jordan. Mo, our guide, said, God blessed Jordan by not giving it any oil. So they have really escaped a lot of the political or fighting and wars, and he said it's a very safe country. They've been able to maintain neutrality. The other thing about Jordan is that they do not have an imam. In other words, the religious leader at the top. So it kind of maintains that separation.
But their king is considered a direct descendant of Muhammad.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah.
And he talked about the difference between the Sunni and the Shiites, which I always have to remember this. The Shias Muslims follow the bloodline of Muhammad, and then the Sunnis leaders just need to be following the teachings of Muhammad. But you'll often hear that in the Sunnis versus the Shiites. This is just make sure we get through these. This Mount Nebo, which is where Moses died. And that was the other thing, is just seeing the desert where the Israelites wandered. And then they finally end up, and Moses goes up to Mount Nebo, and they're looking over into the promised land, and that you can see the Dead Sea and the Jordan and Sea of Galilee, I believe. And so you could just see that whole area that they were going to be moving into. And Moses, God didn't let Moses go into the promised land because he said no to God, throughout. I mean, think about it, he did say no to God a lot. But he died there, and then of course, had gone into Jericho where Joshua went into that, so. At the top in Mount Nebo is also a Franciscan church, and they have this caduceus, or the pole with the snake on it. Remember the story of the snakes biting the people, and then put the snake up there, and they looked at it and believed they were safe from being poisoned by the snake. So it was very.
So I know we're over a couple of minutes, but Jan Foley wrote a letter, and Diana is going to read it. It kind of summarizes everything. We'll be done in a minute or two.
Okay, Janice was a good friend of mine. I've known her since we were 6. We went to grade school, high school, college together. Anyway, she lives in New York, and she came with us, and this is what she had to say. She said, first of all, I would like to extend a most grateful thank you to St. Mark's for allowing me to travel with you. As stated on our communications from the travel company, this trip would certainly be the ultimate Holy Land experience. As I consider a place, an event, or an experience that was most meaningful to me, many come to mind. How am I to choose? Was it the tiny fish nibbling at our toes as we stood in the Sea of Galilee, where Jesus instructed his disciples to cast nets on the other side of the boat? Or was it the boat altar at Magdala, overlooking the Sea of Galilee? That was my favorite. Perhaps was it the painting of Jesus' feet and the woman's hand in the encounter chapel as we walked on the original stone of the Magdala port? Maybe it was our combined singing voices amplified in the woman's atrium at Magdala, the chapel at Shepherd's Field, or the stately sanctuary of St. Anne's Cathedral within the walls of Old Jerusalem. Or can I forget the architectural wonders like the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, the Church of the Nativity, and the Dome of the Rock, along with each of their importance? And what about considering the historical giants such as Masada, Qumran, with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and Megiddo? Certainly, the communion we shared among the ancient olive trees in the Garden of Gethsemane should be considered a spiritual highlight. Or should I consider the amazing geographical sites and experience we encountered, such as floating in the Dead Sea, glamping in the Wadi Rum, viewing the Promised Land as Moses may have done from Mount Nebo, or setting my sights on the treasury at Petra? Ah, Petra. Having had the good fortune to travel to India a few years ago, I returned to report to those who questioned me on what I thought was meaningful. I would reply that my senses had been assaulted, filled with all the sounds, sights, and smells. As I return from the Holy Land journey, I find myself reporting in a different way. My spirituality, emotions, and intellect have been assaulted in a very positive, meaningful, and lasting way.
Thank you all.